The unveiling of women for erotic, creative, and societal reasons is unfortunately nothing new. But what if we, as women, reclaimed both the veiling and unveiling of our bodies on our own terms? Hi, my name is Freya Serafina. I'm a PhD student in women's spirituality. And today I want to talk about the figure of Salome in the Bible and her dance of the seven veils as it was creatively reinterpreted throughout history. Let's dig into it. So this photo you see right here is a photo of a woman named Maud Allan. And Maud Allan portrayed Salome in a 1906 production of Vision of Salome in Vienna. It was later captured and distributed in 1908, entitled Salome, or Dance of the Seven Veils. So let's back up a minute. Who the hell is Salome? Well, Salome was the daughter of Herodias and King Herod II. Some accounts describe her as being the stepdaughter of Herod Antipas, whom her mother remarried. Salome is mentioned in both the Gospel of Mark and the Gospel of Matthew. Mark chapter 6, verses 21 to 29, tells us that Herod, for his birthday, ordered a great banquet and invited many guests. When Salome came and danced for Herod and his guests, he was so pleased that he promised her with an oath, saying, "Whatever you ask, I will give you, up to half my kingdom." At the ushering of her mother, Salome asked for the head of John the Baptist on a platter. While Herod was upset by this request, he complied and gave Salome what she wished for. In the many years and interpretations to come, Salome is depicted as an erotic dancer giving an erotic dance. The pleasure Herod experienced while watching her was transformed into sexual pleasure and sexual desire. It was then argued that Herod's sexual pleasure at seeing Salome's dance is what prompted him into giving her whatever she asked for. But how old was Salome? Was she just a child doing what she was asked to do? Was she a young girl who simply performed a party dance that pleased the guests at the dinner party and her stepfather for his birthday? And what about the word pleased? The particular Greek word used for please, oresko, is also used in places like 1 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 15, "They please not God and are contrary to all men." This would suggest that the word doesn't have a particularly erotic connotation, but is used in the most base sense of the word. And how much of the over-sexualization of young girls do we have to blame on Orientalism as well? In the artistic reenactments and representations of Salome's dance, we are often presented with an erotic belly dancer performing in an exuberant palace in the Middle East that visually mimics something that we might find in Disney's Aladdin. Our notions of foreign being erotic and therefore somehow overtly sexual often leads to the demonizing of whole groups of people, cultures, religious customs, and is heavily steeped in racism and fetishism. These exoticized depictions of Salome are frustrating and disappointing, but unfortunately not surprising given how society views and treats women and young girls. But there's an article that I stumbled upon that kind of got my brain moving in a different direction as someone who studies religions and spirituality. In the Journal of the Society for Dance Research, there's an article written by Peter Cook that examines two distinct paintings of Salome by Gustave Moreau. The first was an oil painting titled Salome, and the second was a watercolor called The Apparition. Salome, the painting, portrayed the figure of Salome standing on her tiptoes as ballerinas do, completely frozen in a hieratic pose, one arm outstretched and the other holding a lotus flower. The Apparition sets a new scene where Salome is frozen in horror at the vision of the beheading, whereas all the other figures in the painting are enraptured by her dance and do not see what she sees. These were debuted in 1876 and were the immediate cause for contemplation and discussion. But the reason these paintings received the renown and fame they did was thanks to the descriptions they were given by writer Joris Karl Huysmans in his book Ouroboros, published in 1884. A portion of the description of Salome's dance is as follows. I shall read for you. In the perverse smells of perfumes, in the overheated atmosphere of this church, Salome, with her left arm extended in a gesture of command, and her right arm folded, holding a large lotus flower, just go with me, with her face, level with her face, advances slowly on her toes to the chords of a guitar whose strings are plucked by a squatting woman. With her meditative, solemn, almost august face, she begins the lubricious dance, which is to awaken the slumbering senses of the aged Herod. Her breasts undulate, and rubbed by her whirling necklaces, their nipples stand up. Come on, please, please, please. Anyways, concentrated, with her gaze fixed, like a sleepwalker, she sees neither the trembling Herod nor her mother, the ferocious Herodias, who is watching over her. So I'd like to point out that in this story in the Bible, and in this depiction as well, it's the two women in the story that team up to make sure that the king is put under the influence, and then we're able to behead John the Baptist. So it's the women who are to blame. Oh, how I love that. More, a similarly interesting description is given of the apparition. He says, with a gesture of horror, Salome repels the terrifying vision that nails her, immobile on her toes. Her eyes dilate, her hands convulsively grip her throat, under the burning darts that escape from the precursor's head. While Moreau's contemporaries also released depictions of Salome during this time, this notion of complete hieratic stasis, leading to priestly poses and reference, is only found in Moreau's work. These images, along with their illuminating descriptions, brought me to a different groundbreaking conclusion. This erotic dance performed by Salome was never a dance. At least, not in the way we've been led to believe. Instead, it was a ritual in preparation for the beheading of John the Baptist. This sacrificial death ritual, performed by Salome the priestess, enraptured her audience to the point of putting them in a trance-like state, where only Salome saw the outcome before it was finished. In later videos, we'll get into discussion about temple priestesses, who they were, what their role in society were, and how male-dominated patriarchal religions attempted to erase them throughout history. But for now, what I'll say is this. The Bible painting Salome and her mother as sexual, wicked, and sinful, and the reason why John the Baptist is dead, is an excellent way to drive home the fact that women can't be trusted, and therefore they should not be given positions of power in religious spheres and in society. This doesn't erase the question of Salome's age and the influence of her mother in her choices, but it does make me question why her age is left out when there's plenty of description of her body and her wardrobe and her dance and how she asks for John the Baptist's head on a platter. Her innocence, or in my belief, role as temple priestess, which, by the way, many daughters of nobility and family of nobility that were women were automatically made temple priestesses during this time. Read a book in the description and you'll see. Is swept aside to make room for sexuality and bloodlust. Salome's Dance of the Seven Veils, which is depicted in film and a ton of other mediums, in which she removes one layer of clothing at a time while sensually dancing for Herod, really drives this point home for me. Salome's true role as temple priestess and Moreau's depiction of her as seer and prophetess made me think about how that role has really permeated throughout history in folklore and mythology through the role of the seventh daughter. To put it briefly, the seventh daughter of a seventh daughter is seen as a lucky child. And in some societies, they're viewed as witches. This can be expanded to include all genders, and there are records throughout history that speak to the seventh child being able to cast spells and create cures and remedies for illness. The combination of both Salome's erasure and mutation into a character that causes the downfall of a great man, and her connection as seer and priestess, to be really telling of the ways in which history has attempted to eradicate women, their roles, their positions of power, and their contributions in multiple spheres. And I also find it interesting that we're still having, in modern times, discussions about the veiling and unveiling of women. Whether women are being forced to veil, whether women are being forced to remove their veil. Both of those things are equally problematic and troublesome, especially when there's a ton of women who veil who people don't bat an eye at, like Catholic nuns, for example. Salome is a figure who was transformed and remade in the eyes of the patriarchy, when in reality, the archetype of the seventh daughter, the archetype of Salome, can be used as an empowering figure that can remind us of our bodily autonomy and can set us on the path of reclaiming that bodily autonomy by reclaiming the true nature of the figure of Salome. So, let us choose to veil or unveil on our own terms. Let us have autonomy over our bodies. Let us be both sacred and sexual according to our own desires. Let us be magical and powerful. Let us dance our dance as priestesses and honor all women of all times and spaces. Blessed be.